Northampton in England slapped the book 1984 with a trigger warning. Trigger warning. Saying that it contains explicit material some students might find offensive and upsetting. Remarkable, I think. In a lot of ways, 1984 is one of those books that for me is, I wouldn't call it a defining book. I wouldn't say that it's the book that changed my life. It's not the book that I reread every year or anything. There are people I know that reread Lord of the Rings every couple of years and other books that people reread on a fairly regular basis. For me, those books are mostly history books or political type books, but there are some books that I reread now and again, and 1984 would certainly come into that category. In my strange world, my weird way of thinking, I am convinced that the most compelling character in 1984 is not Winston. I know he's the protagonist, and I know he's the focal point of things. I get that. But for me, he is not the focal, he's not the most compelling character. He's not the character that when I read the book, I go, I want to know more about him. I think we know everything there is to know about Winston, and there's very little left to the imagination. But there is a character that just, I find myself every time I read it, heck, every time I watch the movie, I find myself going, I need more about him. He's clearly more than he seems to be. He comes across as a very fatherly figure. He's friendly-ish, but at the same time, he's powerful, so everybody's afraid of him. And he's got this slow attitude about him, like he's trying to guide people, and he's clearly a provocateur. That character, of course, is O'Brien, played by Richard Burton in the movie. And I find him absolutely fascinating, absolutely compelling. Why? I'll give you my surprise revelation about the book 1984 and the story 1984. I am convinced, absolutely convinced, that O'Brien is Big Brother. I don't mean this in the sense of the head, the actual person that they trundle out and go Big Brothers. I'm convinced that O'Brien really is Big Brother. He's like the Wizard of Oz, is a creation of a lesser man. What is it, Snowpiercer, which is a show for some reason I keep watching. There is no guy that actually runs it. It's creation. And for me, the climax of the book is when O'Brien has Winston. In the movie, he's strapped to the table, and he's showing O'Brien how thought crime occurs. Keeps holding up the 4 fingers, right? How many fingers do you see? And we have this philosophical discussion about, well, it's 4. And O'Brien's like, no, it's 5. And as long as you continue to think that it's 4, we're going to make it hurt. Until and unless you agree with me that it's 5, I'm going to continue to torture you. That's how thought crime is made to occur. It's weird to me because in today's world, of course, we are forced into areas of new think, as you know. We are forced to think about things that we know are absurd. It's the quote attributed to Voltaire. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And in the same way that O'Brien is able to make people believe, or at least say that they believe, absurdities, what we don't know after that is how much of the atrocities that are being committed are committed because people have given in to the absurdities that O'Brien has made them believe. Big Brother, however you want to put it. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And when we consider all the atrocities of today, all the absurdities of today, we start going down that road that 1984 may be trying to get us to think about. If you'll believe this nonsense, how far will you go for the O'Briens and the Big Brothers of the world? If they convince you that 2 plus 2 really does equal 5, how far will you go to convince other people of that? Just some of the absurdities of the day. I mean, I don't have time to go through everything we're being told to have to believe, but you know what some of these are. If masks work, why aren't they working? Well, now today we're told N95s are the key, the secret. Remember back at the beginning we were told N95s, don't get an N95, we need those for... Now I'm told we have a national stockpile of some 400 million N95 masks. Here, take some for free. If masks work, why don't they work? If vaccines work, why aren't they working? Why are people getting more breakthrough infections? If a dude is a girl, why can't he have a baby? Why can't he swim on the girls' team and win these things? But if you don't accept these things, if you look at these things and go, that's absurd, that's ridiculous, you are the thought criminal. And while they're not using that term these days, you can almost, you're dead naming people, you're misgendering people, you're trying to murder people because you don't wear masks or go get vaccinated or whatever. They don't call it thought crime, but it certainly has that same feel, doesn't it? It has that same feel that O'Brien is sitting over your shoulder going, how many fingers am I holding up? And if you say 4, which is the truth, they kind of crank up the heat a little bit and make you more uncomfortable. And every person, this is the sad truth of humanity, is that every person has their breaking point. Every person at some point will give in, or they'll die. One of the two. And as long as we're doing that, well, how hard is it going to be to continue to make those things believed? And when you have your mentors and your seniors and your friends and your parents or whomever, teachers, telling you that 2 plus 2 equals 4 or 5 rather, you start believing it, even though your evidence in your face is no, it's 4, but they keep telling me it's 5. Must be. It must be true, because even I just can't see it. Maybe I am the mental deviant because I'm not able to see that 2 plus 2 equals 5. It must be my fault, not theirs, right? This is where the University of Northampton has stepped in and slapped 1984 with a trigger warning, which is about the most 1984 thing they could possibly have done. Kids can't handle the truth, I guess. Is that what we're being told? We need a trigger warning because the material contained inside the book 1984 might be offensive or upsetting. In the articles that I read, it did not define what the upsetting or offensive material was. They didn't say. It just said it might contain this, and therefore we should trigger warning this. Does that really surprise anybody? I'm actually kind of surprised that more universities haven't done this, because the book 1984 is a violent book. It's a book about evil. It's a book about philosophy and questioning these things. And it makes you wonder the question, are kids today just really that soft that they can't handle these kinds of thought processes? Or is it possible that the teachers or the administrators of the school are that soft and they can't handle it? Or is it possible that we've just forgotten what education actually is? I first read the book 1984. I read it in high school. And the weird thing about it to me is that I have absolutely almost no memory of it whatsoever. I know we read it. And I remember a specific discussion because, if you recall, I went to high school in the late 70s and early 80s, graduated in 1981. And at the time, there was a very popular video that had come out by Pink Floyd. Another Brick in the Wall was the album. The album is very dystopian, and the album has a very much the flavor of 1984. And the whole sequence seems to be drawn in some cases from the imagery of the book 1984. And I remember that distinctly. I remember that going, hey, that's right out of 1984. But I have no other memory of it. Other than a few months later, or a few weeks later, we saw the film in class, which was highly unusual for two reasons. One, because we were in Utah, and this film contains some material that is clearly adult in nature. So we had to have parental permission slips to see the movie. I don't think my parents knew that the movie it involved nudity because they signed off on it. Or they did. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't. But they did sign off on it. And I did see the film in high school. And I remember the film having much more of an impact at that time on me than the book. Later, with the Afternoons Live Book Guild, we would read it. It was the first book we read in that. And I remember reading it not haphazardly, but trying to get through it quickly so that I could be ready for the discussions. I was reading it more as I want to be ready for the discussions in the book club rather than trying to learning the lessons of it. A year or so ago, I reread it because someone had pointed out a passage to me that I guess I just missed. I don't know. Maybe I skimmed over it. I don't know. But it was the scene where Winston goes to the bar and he's trying to talk to the old man about the past. Was the past better or the past worse? Because these memories had been manipulated by Big Brother, saying that the past was bad and now everything's great. Everything's so much better now. And Winston's looking at it going, things suck now. Was it really that much worse back then? And he wanted to know. And it's a fascinating scene. And I thought to myself, this is what education actually is. The way I have read 1984, from starting in high school to now, from starting in high school where it was just an assignment that I was going to take a test on, which character is the protagonist, which is the antagonist, which character properly uses pronouns or, prepositional phrases or whatever, to the point now where it's more of I wouldn't call it Torah study, but it's certainly got some Talmudic elements to the way I read it now. What's deeper here? What's more meaningful? What is the author really getting at? What is the story really driving at here? And those things can be very different. We start with a basic knowledge of things when we're talking about education. We start with a very basic knowledge. 1 + 1 = 2. Therefore, 2 + 2 = 4. And then we go to a working knowledge where we start seeing what we can do with those sorts of things. I was teaching fire control systems when I was teaching for the Navy. You would start with a very basic idea. The fire control system exists to send a missile from point A to point B. That's it. That's all it does. And then we would go to a working knowledge of it. Okay, well, how does it do that? Well, we're going to use a gimbal assembly to align and erect the thing. We're going to use a computer to control that. And we got to know this and we got to know that. But you got to understand computers to be able to understand this. And then eventually you would get to an advanced knowledge of things where you would be chasing ones and zeros through the system. Okay, this is why this circuit does this at this point. This is what this NOR gate does or what that AND gate does, and so forth and so on. How do we get to that point of knowledge? Well, you can't just do it sitting in a classroom. You can't just say to somebody, okay, hereby you have advanced knowledge. It doesn't work that way. It requires us to push boundaries. All right, I'm going to take this basic knowledge and I'm going to go do something with it. It requires the reinforcing of lessons. There were lessons that I learned in basic electronics A school, where I just learned basic electronics. And I thought I was hot stuff. I thought I knew everything there was to know. Got home on leave after that school, went and bought a radio for my truck at the time. And a 1974 Mazda RX truck, rotary engine truck. Very, very unusual. But I wanted to put a radio in it, and so I went and got a radio, and I started putting it in there, and my dad was watching me, and my dad is not an electrician. He's never been to electronics school, but he was a mechanic for many, many years. And he's watching me do this, and he says, "That doesn't look right." I wired something in. I said, "Dad, just graduated from electronics school. I know what I'm doing." And I started lecturing him. I remember this. I started lecturing him about the super heterodyne, this, that, and blah, 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 which had nothing to do with what I was doing, but I wanted him to be impressed. He just sort of shrugged and said, "Okay." Started the truck. Radio caught fire. Had to have the truck repaired. Dad said to me, probably I didn't go to electronics A school, but I know that won't work. We have to reinforce lessons. And when I stopped and thought about what I was doing, I went, oh, crap, I knew that. We have to overcome overconfidence in our understanding of things. If you have a basic knowledge of something, you don't get put in charge of operating stuff because you don't have the advanced knowledge that you need. You don't have the working knowledge that you need. But we have to overcome that overconfidence. This is what education is. We start with reading the book in high school, and then we move through it. And each time we learn it, each time we read it, we learn something a little bit deeper, a little bit more meaningful, a little more applicable to what we're doing. This is education. But now along comes the University of Northampton, slapping a trigger warning on it. Trigger warning. The problem with the trigger warning isn't that the material is offensive or upsetting or anything like that. Frankly, and I'll say this with love, if it offends you or upsets you, good. Figure out why it upsets you or offends you and grow with that. You should be seeking out things that offend you and, concern you, upset you. But no, we put a trigger warning on it because it seems to me, and maybe this is out there, I don't know. It seems to me that we are trying to be destructive to learning. We don't want people to learn. It's not softness. It's worse. It's a deliberate attempt to stop people from learning. This upsets you. It might upset you. Might. So you should avoid it. The truth of the matter is that O'Brien could be, trying to be the provocateur, but it may just be the piece of information that one piece of data that you need in order to succeed in life. What if there are deeper lessons in 1984 that would cause someone to understand things differently about the world today? What if there are deeper meanings in anything that's been slapped with a trigger warning? The Bible, the Constitution, both items that have been slapped with trigger warnings in recent years. Why? It may upset you. It may offend you. The problem is, it may teach you something. So you have to ask this. You have to ask the simple question: why are they slapping this trigger warning on it? What is it in here they don't want me to see? What is it in here that they're trying to hide from me? The old Tom Sawyer effect, right? The more you try to tell me I can't do something, the more I want to do it. So by slapping your trigger warning on your book, 1984, maybe, perhaps, hopeful, it will encourage more people to go read it and see exactly what it is the University of Northampton and others don't want you to see.